It began with a velvet box that was never supposed to leave the royal vault. Deep inside Windsor Castle, whispers spread after Princess Anne reportedly intervened at the final moment to stop Princess Beatrice from inheriting Queen Victoria's legendary Bow Brooch. What first appeared to be a quiet disagreement soon spiraled into a brutal royal confrontation involving sealed directives, family alliances, and a forgotten promise allegedly tied to Queen Elizabeth II herself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, it sounded almost too delicate to matter. A brooch, a family keepsake, a private inheritance question hidden behind palace doors. But inside the House of Windsor, jewels are never just jewels. They carry memory, rank, sacrifice, and silent authority. And when reports began circulating that Princess Beatrice had expected Queen Victoria's Bow Brooch to pass into her hands, the atmosphere reportedly changed from sentimental to explosive almost overnight. Palace insiders whispered that the decision had already been moving quietly through private channels before Princess Anne stepped in with the force of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. Anne, long seen as the monarchy's iron guardian, allegedly refused to let emotion blur the boundary between family possession and crown legacy. To her, this was not about denying Beatrice a beautiful heirloom. It was about preventing one of the monarchy's most symbolic pieces from being treated like ordinary inheritance. Behind closed doors at Windsor Castle, tension reportedly rose sharply. King Charles, already carrying the strain of illness and responsibility, was said to be caught between family tenderness and royal protocol. On one side stood the quiet expectation that Beatrice, as a granddaughter of the late Queen's line, might receive a treasured piece. On the other stood Anne's chilling argument: some objects belong not to a person, but to the institution itself. Then came the detail that turned suspicion into panic. Courtiers claimed sealed archival documents had resurfaced, suggesting the Bow Brooch may never have been intended for Beatrice at all. Suddenly, what had looked like a private family disappointment became something far darker, a question of whether someone inside the palace had misunderstood, overreached, or tried to move too quickly before the old rules could be enforced. And that was the moment the whisper became a storm. Because Anne's intervention did not simply block a transfer. It reopened the most dangerous question in royal life. Who has the right to carry the symbols of queens who came before? Beatrice's hopes reportedly collided with Anne's duty, and somewhere between loyalty and legacy, Windsor was forced to choose. But the fight over the Bow Brooch was never really about jewelry. It was about who the monarchy believed should carry Queen Victoria's legacy into the future. Long before it became the center of a royal firestorm, Queen Victoria's Bow Brooch was said to symbolize continuity, discipline, and sacrifice inside the House of Windsor. And according to various royal historians, the piece carried rules far older than the people now battling over it. Its story was never simply about diamonds arranged into a graceful shape. It was about memory. It was about authority. It was about the silent language of monarchy, where one jewel could say what no courtier dared to speak aloud. From Queen Victoria's private collection, the Bow Brooch allegedly moved through generations as more than an ornament. It became a marker of endurance, a reminder that royal survival depended not on emotion, but on order. That was why Queen Elizabeth II reportedly treated pieces like this as part of a sacred royal archive. They were not rewards to be handed out when affection softened the rules. They were symbols assigned with care, worn with purpose, and protected from careless inheritance. Palace historians have long whispered that certain jewels were never meant to drift into private branches of the family, no matter how loved those relatives might be. They belonged to duty. They belonged to service. They belonged to the crown. And this is where Princess Anne's shadow began to fall across the dispute. Anne understood the old code, because she had lived by it. She had watched her mother carry the monarchy through scandal, sorrow, and change without treating its symbols as personal trophies. To Anne, allowing the Bow Brooch to pass quietly into Beatrice's hands could have opened a door that the palace might never close again. If one historic jewel could be claimed through expectation, then what came next? A tiara? A necklace? A ceremonial piece tied to queenship itself? Beatrice, according to reports, may have believed the brooch would remain connected to her branch of the family, a final trace of belonging in a royal world that had grown colder around her. That belief made the moment painful. But pain does not always change protocol. Inside Windsor, sympathy and tradition reportedly collided, and tradition did not blink. Comparisons were quickly drawn to earlier tensions over royal jewels, when whispers about tiaras, vault access, and ceremonial privilege exposed deeper anxieties within the family. Royal commentators suggested the fear was not only about Beatrice, it was about precedent, because once the crown begins treating sacred symbols as family keepsakes, the entire structure weakens. And as the pressure inside the palace intensified, insiders claim Anne realized the dispute was no longer private, it had become a battle over the crown's future identity itself. According to whispers circulating through royal administrative circles, the turning point came during a confidential Windsor meeting attended by Princess Anne, senior legal advisors, and representatives connected to the Royal Collection Trust. What happened inside reportedly changed everything. By then, the dispute had already moved beyond quiet disappointment. The Bow Brooch was no longer being discussed as a sentimental object. It had become a test case, a line in the marble, a question no one inside the palace wanted to ask too loudly. Had protocol been bypassed, softened, or quietly ignored? Princess Anne reportedly entered that discussion with the cold focus of someone who had seen too much royal damage caused by hesitation. She was not said to be emotional. She was not said to be cruel. She was, according to insiders, simply immovable. Her concern was brutal in its simplicity. If the brooch had been promised, who had the authority to promise it? If it had been expected, where was that expectation written? And if no document existed, why was anyone treating hope like entitlement? That was when royal legal advisors allegedly began examining older correspondence connected to Queen Elizabeth II. Some accounts suggest the material was vague, but powerful. Other interpretations claim it hinted that the brooch was meant to remain linked to senior service, possibly even reserved for a future Princess Royal figure rather than pass through a private family branch. Nothing about that claim was easy. It carried emotional weight. It also carried consequences. Beatrice's supporters reportedly pushed back, arguing that bloodline mattered, that history did not belong only to working royals, and that a granddaughter of the York line should not be quietly erased from the monarchy's living memory. Their argument was human. Anne's argument was institutional. And inside Windsor, those two forces can tear a family apart. Palace aides were allegedly told not to discuss the matter publicly. Not in corridors, not with friendly journalists, not even in vague whispers that could travel from one household to another. That level of silence only made the story feel more dangerous. Because when the palace stops talking, people start listening harder. Reports suggest Prince William quietly backed Anne's position, not because he wished to wound Beatrice, but because he understood the warning beneath the dispute. If the crown surrendered one symbol under pressure, every future inheritance battle would become louder, sharper, and harder to contain. Senior courtiers reportedly feared that public exposure would not simply embarrass the family, it could reveal a monarchy divided over its own rules. But behind Anne's icy composure, another problem was emerging. because some insiders believed this wasn't merely about protocol anymore, but about power. Princess Anne has spent decades earning a reputation as the monarchy's ultimate enforcer, and insiders now claim she launched what some courtiers privately called an iron protocol to prevent the Bow Brooch from leaving the senior royal orbit. Once that phrase began circulating, the mood inside the palace reportedly changed. This was no longer a family discussion wrapped in polite language. It had become a controlled operation, quiet but unforgiving, shaped by the same discipline that had defined Anne's entire royal life. She was not acting like a relative protecting a preference. She was acting like a guardian defending a line that could not be crossed. Reports suggest Anne pushed for a full review of symbolic royal heirlooms, not only the Bow Brooch, but any piece whose meaning reached beyond personal beauty. Palace administrative teams allegedly froze informal inheritance conversations, shutting down whispers before they could turn into accepted truth. That freeze was devastating because it made one thing clear: expectation would no longer be allowed to become ownership. Royal collection experts were reportedly brought into the matter to classify the Brooch's deeper significance. Was it a jewel? Was it a family object? Or was it part of the crown's constitutional language, a silent emblem tied to service, rank, and continuity? The answer, insiders suggest, strengthened Anne's hand. The more the brooch was studied, the harder it became to treat it as a private gift. And then came William. Reports suggest he and Anne quietly formed a united front during internal debates, bound not by coldness, but by fear of what could happen if the monarchy weakened its own rules. William understood that one day these decisions would fall to him. Anne understood that the old safeguards were already under pressure. Together, they represented something powerful: the future heir standing beside the old guard. Courtiers described Anne as unmoved by emotional pressure. Not because she lacked feeling, but because she believed feeling had already wounded the monarchy too many times. Titles had caused storms. Patronages had caused bitterness. Invitations, residences, roles, and honors had all become battlegrounds. Now a brooch threatened to become the next fracture point. King Charles reportedly struggled to mediate between competing factions, caught in the painful middle between family compassion and institutional duty. But during deliberations, one phrase allegedly returned again and again: duty over sentiment. It was sharp, it was merciless, and it carried the force of a final warning. Anne's iron protocol did not merely block movement around the Bow Brooch. It sent a message through every royal corridor: the crown's legacy would not be softened by private pressure, not even when the pressure came from within the family itself. Yet as Anne tightened control around the royal archives, supporters of Beatrice allegedly began pushing back in ways the palace never expected. Those close to Princess Beatrice reportedly believed she had been unfairly sidelined, and whispers from inside aristocratic circles suggest frustration began building rapidly behind the scenes as the Bow Brooch controversy intensified. For Beatrice, this was allegedly not just a dispute over an object locked inside royal history. It felt personal, painfully personal. She had remained loyal through years of family embarrassment, public pressure, and the shrinking influence of the York branch. She had not launched open attacks. She had not turned royal pain into a weapon. And yet, according to those sympathetic to her, when a symbol of belonging seemed close enough to touch, the palace appeared to pull it away. That sense of rejection reportedly hardened the mood around her supporters. They argued that Beatrice was not an outsider, not a stranger, and not someone casually reaching for glory. She was born into the bloodline. She had endured the weight of that name. To them, Anne's position felt less like protection and more like punishment, a cold reminder that loyalty without senior status could still leave a royal standing outside the locked door. Then the wider argument began to shift. Behind closed doors, discussions reportedly emerged about modernization versus rigid protocol. Was the monarchy protecting sacred tradition, or was it clinging to an old system that punished those who no longer fit perfectly inside its working structure? Some insiders claimed Anne represented the old guard at its most unforgiving, firm, disciplined, and completely unwilling to let sentiment rewrite the rules. Public speculation only deepened when royal watchers noticed Beatrice's absence from several key appearances. Nothing was officially confirmed, but silence in royal life often speaks louder than statements. Every missed event became a clue. Every quiet week became fuel. And palace aides reportedly feared the controversy could become another media-driven family fracture, the kind that begins with whispers and ends as a national debate. King Charles, already under enormous strain, was said to have urged both sides to avoid public escalation. He reportedly understood the danger better than anyone. The monarchy had survived too many storms by presenting unity even when unity was fragile. Another internal battle, especially one involving inheritance, symbolism, and Queen Elizabeth's legacy, could reopen wounds the palace had spent years trying to close. Royal commentators debated whether the old inheritance traditions had become outdated, but Anne's defenders saw the question differently. To them, this was not about denying Beatrice's dignity. It was about preventing the crown from becoming a collection of personal claims, emotional exceptions, and competing family branches. And somewhere in that painful divide, Beatrice's disappointment became part of something much larger than herself. A struggle between belonging and duty, affection and authority, bloodline and service. But while the palace tried desperately to contain the fallout, one final revelation reportedly changed the direction of the entire conflict. Then came the document that insiders claim silenced the room entirely, a private instruction allegedly connected to Queen Elizabeth II, resurfacing at the exact moment the Bow Brooch battle reached its breaking point. According to palace whispers, the discovery did not arrive with drama. It came through paper, procedure, and the quiet machinery of royal archives. But its effect was devastating. Reports suggest archivists uncovered guidance tied to symbolic royal heirlooms, language that allegedly pointed toward preservation, restraint, and the protection of pieces connected to senior working royal tradition. In that moment, the argument reportedly shifted from opinion to legacy. For Princess Anne, this was said to be the confirmation she had been waiting for. The late Queen's name still carries a force inside Windsor that no living royal can easily challenge. Her reign had been built on discipline. Her symbols had been guarded with almost sacred care. So, if her private guidance suggested that jewels like the Bow Brooch should remain within the active line of royal service, Anne's position no longer looked severe. It looked inherited. Courtiers described the atmosphere afterward as cold and absolute. Beatrice's allies, who had argued that bloodline and loyalty should matter, were reportedly left stunned. Because how could anyone push back against the woman who had held the crown for 7 decades? How could personal disappointment compete with a final instruction tied to the monarch who had shaped modern royal identity itself? Questions quickly began spreading through the palace. How many other directives remained hidden in the archives? How many future disputes had already been quietly settled by Queen Elizabeth before her death? And if this document existed, what else had the late Queen anticipated before the family even understood the battles ahead? Reports suggest William supported enforcing what was described as the Queen's final intention. For him, this was not simply about Anne winning an internal argument. It was about protecting the future crown from endless emotional claims. The monarchy could not survive if every historic jewel became a battlefield, every heirloom a grievance, every private expectation a public crisis. King Charles, according to insiders, reluctantly accepted the outcome. Not because it was painless, but because stability demanded sacrifice. He had spent his reign carrying illness, family division, and constitutional pressure. Now he faced another cruel truth. Sometimes preserving the institution means disappointing the people closest to it, and so the Bow Brooch remained under tighter control. Not as a decoration withheld, but as a warning preserved in diamonds. The late Queen's shadow had entered the room, and once it did, no one could pretend this was merely a family disagreement. And with the late Queen's shadow now hanging over the palace once again, the monarchy entered a new and uneasy phase of control. In the end, insiders suggest the monarchy made its choice clear: continuity would outweigh emotion, and tradition would triumph over personal expectation, even at the cost of painful family fractures. The Bow Brooch, according to reports, remained within senior royal control, guarded not only as a jewel, but as a piece of institutional language. Its meaning had become too heavy, too dangerous, too closely tied to the crown's idea of itself. What Beatrice may have seen as a treasured inheritance, the palace reportedly came to view as a symbol that could not be allowed to drift into uncertainty. And through that decision, Princess Anne's influence appeared stronger than ever. She had not raised her voice. She had not needed public sympathy. Her power came from something colder and more permanent: discipline. Inside palace operations, insiders described her role as sharper, firmer, almost impossible to ignore. Anne had reminded everyone that the monarchy does not survive by pleasing every branch of the family. It survives by protecting the center. William, too, reportedly emerged from the dispute more clearly positioned as a defender of institutional continuity. His quiet support for Anne was not simply family politics. It was a signal of the reign to come. The future king was learning in real time that compassion has limits when the crown itself is at risk. Every private quarrel can become a public fracture. Every symbolic concession can become a precedent. And every precedent can become a threat. Beatrice, meanwhile, was said to have quietly stepped back from inheritance discussions, not with open rebellion, but with the kind of silence that carries its own sorrow. Her distance reportedly unsettled those who understood the emotional cost of the decision. Because even when the palace wins, someone inside the family loses. That is the brutal bargain of monarchy. Unity is preserved by asking individuals to swallow pain in private. Palace insiders began speaking of a silent reordering inside the House of Windsor. Anne and William stood closer to the operational heart of the institution. Charles continued balancing illness, family tension, and constitutional responsibility, carrying the burden of a king who wanted peace but could not always afford softness. Around them, the old rules seemed to harden again. Royal commentators compared the dispute to earlier succession-era struggles, moments when the monarchy had been forced to choose between affection and authority. And once again, the crown was framed as something larger than individual desire, larger than disappointment, larger than family expectation. The decision over the Bow Brooch did not heal the palace. It clarified it. It showed who held influence, who had been pushed outward, and who would shape the rules of the next royal era. But even after the decision was finalized, many inside royal circles feared the emotional consequences had only just begun. The Bow Brooch may never appear in public controversy again. It may return quietly to a guarded vault, untouched and unseen. But according to those who witnessed the conflict unfold, the battle surrounding it revealed something far more important than inheritance. It exposed the monarchy's deepest fear: losing control of its own legacy. By the time the decision settled, the Brooch had become more than a disputed heirloom. It had become a symbol of the monarchy's struggle between past and future, between emotional belonging and institutional survival. To Beatrice's supporters, it represented a painful closing of doors. To Anne, it represented a line that had to remain unbroken. And to the palace, it became proof that even the smallest object can carry the weight of a dynasty. Princess Anne was once again portrayed as the final guardian of Queen Elizabeth's institutional vision. Not soft, not sentimental, not easily moved by private disappointment. Her loyalty was to the crown before comfort, to duty before affection, and to order before family pressure. That is what made her feared, respected, and impossible to ignore. Beatrice's disappointment reportedly left scars that may not be discussed openly, but could linger quietly for years. Because royal pain rarely arrives with public anger. It settles into silence. It appears in distance, absence, and carefully controlled smiles. And behind that silence, insiders believe the York branch may feel more isolated than ever. William, meanwhile, emerged even more aligned with Anne's philosophy of royal discipline. He saw the danger of hesitation. He understood that the next reign would require harder boundaries, stricter controls, and fewer emotional exceptions. Charles, burdened by illness and family tension, was forced to accept a truth every monarch eventually faces: unity sometimes survives only through sacrifice. Royal insiders now predict future inheritance disputes may become even more explosive. Jewels, homes, titles, archives, patronages, everything connected to royal identity may face tighter oversight. The palace, shaken by how quickly one brooch became a battlefield, appears determined to preserve symbolic artifacts under stricter control. Publicly, the monarchy will close ranks. It always does. The smiles will return. The statements will remain careful. The silence will be polished until it looks like peace. But beneath the surface, this dispute has left behind a warning. The next war over legacy may already be waiting. Because inside the House of Windsor, jewels were never simply decorations, they were weapons of legacy, and the battle to control them was far from over. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.